Okay, we're back to it because had a slight network interruption.
To that several times, like they were interacting when something happens between the two and she doesn't see Heathcliff, which is what she calls him in the movie, for like 5 years. When we get to this point, when they're adults, I felt far less interested in the way that they were interacting with each other. Now, you get hinted at several times like we are feeling for each other, but whenever they're on screen together in that middle portion of the film, I'm like, I'm not necessarily feeling this as much as I need to. And then the movie starts to hit the point to where we get the physical aspect of the relationship. There's a little tease early on, and later on we get quite a bit of it. And I'm sitting here thinking, I am still, and it's steamy, okay? I'm still not feeling what I'm required to feel between these two to fully get on board with what this story is trying to get me to do. Now, aesthetically, visually, like I mentioned, Emerald Fennell, she has that stranglehold on the type of story she wants to tell anytime I watch her movie. Saltburn, I enjoyed, had some issues with it, but that was a very interesting film. Promising Young Woman, I was a massive fan of that movie. All of her films have a distinct style, are really colorful. I love the way they look and feel. The cinematography here worked extremely well. Charlie XCX, there's some music playing throughout this entire film. It creates a vibe, absolutely. And I think, if you're just watching this and seeing it aesthetically, it is aesthetically pleasing in that way. But when you marry everything together and you kind of see what she's trying to go for here, it doesn't ultimately execute in the way that it needs to get you fully invested, if you're not just there for the fact that they are two beautiful people and they get together and they do the things. It's like, yeah, if you're there like, all right, I just wanted to see that, and you get that out of the film, absolutely. But there's a shallowness to what this film is trying to do, and it also feels very tedious with the way they're going about it. I mean, once things kind of settled down from that first act, it felt like it took forever for us to get anywhere with this relationship, and I saw immediately what they were trying to do, and it attempts to captivate us. Anytime Catherine walks in a room, you see the dress flowing and the movements of the characters and the landscapes behind the horses riding through the wilderness. I get all that, and it is beautiful. But if you can't capture me with the script along with the aesthetics, the vibes, the visuals, if those two things aren't married together most of the time, you're not going to get me emotionally invested. And unfortunately, I just wasn't emotionally invested. It's very 70s coded in that way. And we've been getting those 70s vibes as of late, like The Secret Agent last year. And I mentioned that visual appeal of Frankenstein. This is very different. And honestly, everything's a little more vibrant in this film, which is attempting to coincide with the vibrancy, the spark behind their relationship. That is going to be very up and down, and there's a point in the film where they're basically fighting with each other, like, you're not going to do what you say you're going to do, blah, blah, blah. But even then, that tension that is escalating, that is probably the best moments with their relationship. But when we fall back into just the sexual element, the sexual aspect of it all, that's when I needed to really feel. If you take the name, even if you put the quotations around the name, which is what Emerald Fennell did, but you have to coincide with what the book does in a way, and so they weren't really able to step outside of that to make themselves uncomfortable and create a film that was either wildly different and even more interesting, or something that was a faithful adaptation. They're riding that fence. They're somewhere in the middle. And it's probably the worst place this movie could be. How did you feel while watching this? Did it capture the proper emotions? Did Margot Robbie do her job? I believe she did. Jacob Elordi does a nice job, even though there wasn't much to him beyond what they tell you about him. And I just feel like his character needed a different angle to be far more interesting than he was. Even when he comes back and some interesting things happen there with the story, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I thought it'd be a little more interesting than that. So again, I want to know your thoughts. Leave your comments down below, like this video, share it, all of those things. If you like these reviews, stay tuned. We've got plenty more. And the reviews you don't see long-form videos of, there are shorts on this channel. my shorts. Wuthering Heights has a lot to offer visually. The colors pop, the camera movements are slick, and the production design is impeccable. The stylish atmosphere brings so much to the table, yet the screenplay often fails to match those visual highs with real narrative stakes. What starts charming gradually turns clunky, then tedious. There are pockets of enjoyment to be found. This adaptation ultimately and unfortunately falls a bit flat. All right, stay tuned. More reviews to come, and I'll see you later.
Alright, so you get to play this up here, right?
Let's go and see what Snarky J has to say. Snarky Jockey, I'm gonna call it. Snarky Jockey.
I had absolutely zero
I really hate the fucking walk-ups. I hate it.
expectations for Wuthering Heights, but by the time the film was over, I thought I was going to need to punch something or drive a car to feel manly again.
Of course you did, because you are aggressive at your age. 25 years old, aggressive.
Here. So I know this one is kind of a weird review for this channel, because as somebody who traditionally talks about superheroes and sci-fi, and a lot of it is in fact complaining, it's very weird that not only do I review a romance film, but I also have a pretty positive review to give this film. Now, before we jump into this,
notice how girly she's being. She's taking over 20 minutes to talk about this film.
I do want to preface...
Now, please don't take her seriously, because she's not a fucking critic. She's not a reviewer at all. She's just somebody talking shit.
This review with a couple of different things, okay? First and foremost, I want to let you know that I have never read Wuthering Heights. In fact, up until I saw the title screen in the trailer
I mean, I kind of agree with people on Silent Hill. I still got to work on my playlist for Silent Hill. I enjoyed the film. Was this talking about the game or the movie? Let me see.
So I watched Return to Silent Hill.
Okay, it's talking about... Okay, I see. It's talking about the movie. The movie. Good. Just want to stay on task. Stop. Pardon me for a bit. I got two for whistle. Go. Anything explain, please. We go.
What?
And we're gonna get to them in a bit. Actually, I'm just trying to organize myself here. All right, there we go. Let's go back to Snarky J.
For this movie, I thought it was Withering Heights or Weathering Heights. Does that make me sound super f***ing ignorant? Absolutely. Do I yet know what wuthering means? No, and at this point, I'm too afraid to ask. Now, to do this review, I did go ahead and kind of find the main...
She said that with such energy, like you're supposed to fucking give her some kind of clue to ask. I'm too afraid to ask. Just look up the damn word.
Your points so that I could kind of identify whether or not this was a true adaptation of the book, and I'll talk more about that after. The other thing I do want to disclose is that I was invited to an early premiere for this film, but you guys already know that I'm the kind of individual that you can give free drinks and snacks to before and after.
Yeah, because she's broke.
Or during whatever a film, and I will still come on here and complain because...
Don't even try to make money. She doesn't try to make money. She don't try to do shit. But make these videos, this what she calls reviews.
Because that's just the kind of person that I am. And the last thing, and perhaps the biggest disclosure.
Oh, please love me for being a complete total bitch in front of people.
That I'd like to give before I get into this review that has really rocked me to my core is that I don't like romantic movies. I am arguably the least...
You've already said that. You don't have to repeat yourself. God damn.
romantic human being I have ever met. Like, in the thousands of people that I have interacted with in my life, I assure you, I am the least romantic of them. I don't like rom-coms. I don't like regular roms. I don't want a little bit of rom in my com. I'm not a romantic movie person. They aggravate me. If I wanted to spend
you aggravate me. You aggravate the fuck out of me.
At all, watching somebody yearn and pine and gaze upon something with a devotion that feels almost lustful, that feels sinful, I would have...
You mean like you secretly do? Like you secretly do? You know you do it, come on.
Have somebody follow me around with a camcorder while I try to avoid the bakery at my local grocery store, because that's the way I...
You would love that, trust me. I know you would love it. You love it. You like attention. That's why you have a YouTube channel. You love attention.
I look at Cuban bread and pastries. It's sinful, it's disgusting, it's a pining that is beyond anything anybody has ever understood. I don't want to see...
Willie? Willie? Snarky J? You sure about that? You positive? I call bullshit.
See that in a movie. It's not what I'm into. So
really?
This one, honestly, I really just went to watch it because it was free and because I had a girls' night with one of my best friends. That was...
Once again, I call bullshit. I call bullshit. Damn it. Paste.
Was absolutely the only reason why I went to watch Wuthering Heights. I also didn't have great expectations. Absolutely the only... was free and because I had a girls' night with one of my best friends. That was absolutely the...
247.
Only reason why I went to watch Wuthering Heights. I also didn't have great expectations because if you watch some of the trailers for this film, they try to make it look like a period piece connected to like 50 Shades. I mean, there's hands in the mouth, there's all kinds of shenanigans, there's corsets, there's grunting. I mean, there's a lot. And so I kind of felt like, Jesus Christ, this is a movie for bored wine moms. I'm gonna go watch it because, you know, it's free, but to be completely honest, this is not my type of thing, you know? It doesn't fruit my loops, it just doesn't. That is what I mistakenly thought going into it. When I tell you this movie wuthered my heights, I really do mean it wuthered my heights. So jumping right into the review portion, I would give Wuthering Heights a solid 8 out of 10. There's gonna be spoilers throughout this. I really don't think I have to warn you of that. But Wuthering Heights was a movie that completely subverted expectations for me, and I think that's either gonna be a problem for some people or a benefit for some people. Now, the general experience with this adaptation of Wuthering Heights is gonna depend on two things. Are you really looking for a true connection? It's going to depend on two things. The general experience with this adaptation of Wuthering Heights is going to depend on two...
Okay, she sounds like she's saying Wuthering Heights. Let me look at what Wuthering is. Hold on. Might make sure I'm doing this right too. Okay, good. What's Wuthering? I clearly typed in. I know I did. Computer's trying to act like I typed in WU and I clearly typed in W. Wind blowing strongly with a roaring sound or a place exposed to such blustery, turbulent weather. Yeah, that's why it's called Gone with the Wind. Ooh, that's rough. I got my clothes, my dry clothes though. Yeah, because withering means the same thing. Because of how far, how big, how tall it is. I just think it's funny. She is lovely. Let's get back to it.
Things. Are you
Not
really looking
EJ.
for a true connection to the original? Are you looking for a real adaptation of Emily Bronte's original novel? And are you really devoted to the period piece aspect? Are you going to be looking at some of the fashion and some of the attitudes in this film? Are you going to be looking into...
Maybe. I don't know. I was just watching the movie. I wasn't trying to really overanalyze it like you were suggesting.
into that and really scrutinizing it as period accurate or not. If you are looking for a 100% accurate representation of Wuthering Heights and of the period,
you will never get that with anything. I don't give a damn what it is. I don't care what it is. Video game, based on a novel, based off comic book, based on another movie. It will never, ever, ever despite how much of a right it may or may not have, you will never get that with anything. 100% absolutely perfect? No. It's not possible. Not possible. Recently, we saw this. This is a case with Return to Silent Hill, which I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Not a good film. Not a terrible movie, but not a good adaptation of the video game it's based on. Sorry.
For a 100% accurate representation of Wuthering Heights and of the period during which it was meant to take place, you're probably going to be disappointed. And I think if you go in really expecting a true adaptation of the novel, you're kind of already setting yourself up for failure, because if you look at that title card, it's Wuthering Heights. It's not Wuthering Heights. It's Wuthering Heights. Keep that in mind. I will say, though, this movie was phenomenal. And I hate to admit, because I'm always talking on this channel, I'm always sticking my foot in my mouth, I'm always getting myself in trouble, I'm always saying the wrong thing. But I will tell you that this movie ended and I was crying. I do not cry for movies very often, and I especially don't cry for romantic movies. And this one actually made me cry. Now, is there something wrong with me mentally? We all know yes. But maybe there's something new. I don't know. But this movie actually affected me. And I want to talk more about that. I want to talk first and foremost about the cinematography of this film, because it's not just the fact that Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are a feast for the eyes. They are absolutely gorgeous. But this film itself is so beautiful. The scenery is gorgeous. The set design is absolutely stunning.
It looked like somebody hit on the head with a shovel.
So much symbolism in the colors used, in the rooms, in the lighting. There are shots that deliberately set characters. For instance, one of the main characters, Edgar, he frequently wears greens, right? Green represents envy. And there's a shot during a pivotal moment in the movie where the camera spins around and we're now seeing him dressed in green, but he is in front of a red room as he makes this discovery. I mean, there is so much care taken with the cinematography and the imagery that is created to really tell the story. The set design is stunning. We spent a long time going between like abject poverty and darkness into this almost ethereal, glowing palace of a manor. I mean, there's a lot of juxtaposition in regards to colors and things like that to really represent the class system, which are important themes as far as the novel is concerned. So I really think artistically they did a brilliant job with that in this movie. In the wardrobe department, I've spoken to some of my friends that watched the film with me that are also cosplayers but are familiar with the novel itself, and there were a lot of complaints in regards to how period inaccurate a lot of these garments are, but in regards to telling the story, there's a lot in regards to fabric choice and clothing and colors and all that sort of stuff that really aids in pushing the story along. It's actually fascinating, and it really does make the film so nice to look at. The score as well, I thought was so much better than it was going to be, because when I saw Charlie XCX was credited with some of the music here, look, for some reason, musically, I'm like 65. I'm like a 65-year-old divorced father. So
yeah, a lot of your generation is actually oddly like that. Y'all can quit doing that shit too. Quit saying that. We already fucking know y'all buy vinyl records. We know that. We buy vinyl records. You try your damnedest to be up with the times, but you can't appreciate the music of your own generation because the music of your own generation is mostly utterly shit. But we get it. You don't have to overemphasize it. You 20-year-olds do love to fucking listen to music that is of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. For whatever messed up reason. I mean, I get the 90s, but the 70s, 80s, it's just kind of scary that you like that, but whatever. Music is music,
anything like Charlie XCX or anything that happened at the Grammys, I don't want to hear about it. I don't know these people. I don't want to hear them. But the score for this film,
she tries to be the older of her generation, the wiser. She's like mid-20s, so she's trying to be the outcast, I guess. But they're roughly more or less the same. Mostly, some are different. She may be different. I don't know. But the way that she's projecting herself all the time, now she's giving a pretty good review. Sounds like she watched the movie and appreciated it, and she's talking about costume and design and lighting. But she's kind of making this about herself a little bit too. Oh, I don't like this music, blah blah blah. We don't care what you like. Talk about the movie.
hear about it. I don't know these people.
And I don't. Please quit cussing in your damn reviews. Stop. It's not funny.
Want to hear them. But the score for this film, you do have some parts where there is music that feels a little modern, but it almost reminded me of The Great Gatsby, like Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby, where they kind of did a juxtaposition between modern music of the time versus that, 1920s setting. There's a lot of cool stuff like that in this film that I think really makes it a treat to kind of dig into. Performance-wise, I'll talk a little bit about Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie separately a little later in this video, but honestly, everybody in this film really f***ing delivered. There's nobody that feels like, oh, this is just some irrelevant background character. From Shazad Latif, who plays Edgar Linton, ever jealous, ever pining, but also just really seeking the approval of a woman who kind of doesn't give a shit about him. He delivers a phenomenal performance. Then you've got Alison Oliver, who plays Isabella Linton, and I don't even...
Funny character. Funny ass character.
And want to get into what happens to this character until I talk about the story portion, but holy shit, I have never seen somebody play like this virginal, innocent, just baby woman of a character and then just go totally the opposite direction with it. And you know what? Round of applause, babe. She had me freaking out. That was brilliant. The highlight for me, though, is Hong Chau, who plays Nellie in the film. She does such a brilliant job at keeping this sort of quiet, reserved, kind of contempt about her. I mean, you see her as almost a maternal figure, but she's also so harsh and so contained in her rage that there's so much more to her that is just seething beneath the surface, and she delivers that beautifully. I mean, the entire cast, really, even the kids who played the younger versions of Heathcliff and Kathy really just broke my heart. I mean, there are really, really good performances. For a cast that's admittedly kind of limited, there's not that big a cast in this film, and yet everybody that works in it does a brilliant job at really telling the story and pulling you into their characters. Everybody I found fascinating. Now, story-wise, I really want to get into the story so that I can kind of tell you guys a little bit about the story in this film and how it's going to differentiate from Wuthering Heights. Again, I didn't read the novel, but I did go back and kind of spark note it, and I found the major points. So I'm not going to compare and contrast necessarily, but I do want to kind of give you a rundown of the film so you understand what they did with this one. Essentially, we have Margot Robbie, who plays Kathy, and we have Heathcliff, played by Jacob Elordi. They grow up together, essentially, and they spend their childhood sort of pining for each other all the way into adolescence.
Didn't like the ending.
Now, my big gripe with this movie and why it doesn't get a higher score, 8 out of 10 is pretty high for me, but my biggest gripe with this movie is the fact that the casting choices themselves actually hold the story back. I wasn't totally aware of what the deal was with Wuthering Heights before I went into it, but having gotten a little bit of background, I knew that these two were supposed to be like 16 at the beginning of the film, and while Jacob Elordi, as beautiful as he is, does play younger really well, I just never bought Margot Robbie as the virginal Kathy that she was supposed to be. She's great in the film, and the woman is fucking poetry in motion. I have never seen a face so beautiful, and she's such a phenomenal actress. I mean, she really gives this movie her all, and she's so great in it, but she didn't exactly work for the role she was supposed to play. Now again, this is an adaptation, but it's still an adaptation where they're supposed to be the ages they were in the novel, so it didn't really work for me. Anyway, that gripe aside, these people are pining for each other, and eventually Kathy sees some new rich people moving in, and they've built this amazing property, and she really wants to meet the Lintons, who are the new folks that just moved in. She eventually goes down there herself, hurts her ankle, and ends up staying with the Lintons for I think 6 weeks or something, and in that time, Edgar Linton falls absolutely in love with her. When Kathy gets back, she's perfumed and well-dressed, and of course she's got big ideas, because even though she knows she's in love with Jacob Elordi's Heathcliff, Heathcliff is basically a peasant, and he works for her dad, and he's probably never gonna have any money. She eventually gets proposed to by Edgar, despite all the wonderful things that Heathcliff does for her. His love is not enough. She thinks that despite the fact that she's in love with him, marrying a guy that broke would degrade her. So she ends up accepting Edgar Linton's proposal. She regrets this almost immediately, but by the next morning when she goes to Heathcliff to confess, Heathcliff is gone, brokenhearted, and so is she. So she ends up marrying Edgar Linton. All goes well. She lives with Edgar and his ward, who, you know...
See, I didn't get all that because I got one critique. And I've made this critique before, and it's happened in a lot of films. The plot, the story, is moving too fast. If you get up and use the bathroom, you will miss out. And I know that that's kind of a thing they want. Here's the thing. You don't want to make stuff move too fast. You want to be kind of gradual with it, because even when I'm sitting down, I'm kind of confused. Okay, we will heal one point. Now we'll heal. Now the dad is dead. Spoiler alert. Now this is happening. This happened in like 30 minutes tops. What are we doing here? Can we just slow it down? Because I'm trying to process it. And it's a lot happening second by second. It's not just, okay, because at one point she's... Understand this. Going from engaged to confessing your love and him not being there, then to being married, that happens within 30 fucking seconds. That is too damn fast. And I know they wanted to kind of speed through it, but that's the problem right there, is speeding through it. Wanting to speed through these things. That's the problem. You got to slow it down. You can spread that out within like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. 2 minutes, tops. You know, him being engaged to her, him Eduardo getting, her becoming engaged, her going to tell this to Jacob Elordi's Heath, whatever his name is, Heath, whatever, and then him leaving, and her marrying him. Anyway, let me get out of this and go back to what she just said. Okay.
Immediately, but by the next morning when she goes to Heathcliff to confess, Heathcliff is gone, brokenhearted, and so is she. So she ends up marrying Edgar Linton. All goes well. She lives with Edgar and his ward, who, you know, interestingly enough, they want to make this, she's 16 now, and Kathy has aged a little bit, and they kind of want to make her seem like, holy shit, this kid is so weird, because she's ranting about Romeo and Juliet.
Okay, Snarky J here, J Fett, she's 24-ish, and I guess this character that she's talking about, hold on.
She lives with Edgar and his ward, who, you know, interestingly enough, they want to make this, she's 16.
This ward here, 16, she doesn't look 16, she looks like she's 30, or at least 27.
16 now, and Kathy has aged a little bit.
Just saying.
And they kind of want to make her seem like, holy shit, this kid is so weird, because she's ranting about Romeo and Juliet. She's got a collection of ribbons. She makes a doll with Kathy's hair. And I was kind of thinking, like, this is an early version of, like, a cosplayer, because we're all just ranting about bullshit. And we do have rooms full of craft supplies, because I'm sitting in one right now. And I've never made
So, basically, that's you in the movie. A ward. I mean, this is what you're doing.
a doll out of anybody's hair, but only because nobody will give me their hair to make a doll with. I'm kidding.
Stop it. Get some.
Give me their hair to make a doll with. Now, and I've never made a doll out of anybody's hair, but only because nobody will give me their hair to make a doll with. I'm kidding.
I mean, it's not that weird because back in that time period, how else were you going to put hair on a doll? Use for hair. So it makes sense. It'll work.
Stop it.
By the way, your hair is actually dead. Once you cut it off beyond the scalp, it actually dies off. That's how it sticks together. That's also why there's a hole when you cut your hair. I recently did this. I cut my own hair, which is a sponsor of this video. Cut your own hair. Just joking, but seriously, your hair does die off. You can tell this because of the cells living in your scalp. When you pull on your hair, they hold. But if you cut the hair, it doesn't hold.
Get some help.
Years pass, and Kathy basically lives adored and pampered and spoiled, but also incredibly bored. And she's got this deep longing in her because she's always gonna love Heathcliff. She's always gonna regret losing him. And one day, promptly after revealing to her husband Edgar that she is with child, she finds a childhood prank in her room that determines the fact that Heathcliff has returned. She keeps the fact of the pregnancy from him, and she essentially starts up an affair with him after they both come to the conclusion that they never stopped loving each other, that each one kind of squandered an opportunity to love the other many years ago, and now, well, she's gonna have what she wants. And it's when she gets to have her cake and eat it too that all those scrumptious scenes from the trailers basically get to be revealed. Again, I really think they make way more of a meal of this steamy period piece than it really is. I mean, again, the trailers oversell it. So realistically, I was kind of glad that that was kind of contained to specific moments throughout the film. Now, all of this delectable steaminess is happening in secret, except the one person who has the secret, besides, you know, Heathcliff and Kathy, is Nellie, who is kind of full of loathing for these people. So eventually, she decides to tell Edgar what she's seen, because Kathy is refusing to tell Heathcliff that she's pregnant, so she's basically just having her cake and eating it too, right? Which that saying has always confused me, because why would you have cake and not eat it? I don't know what else we would do with it. But anyway, Nellie eventually decides to...
Because it's actually hard to have your cake and when you eat your cake, you can't have it. Because if you eat the cake, let me go back down on this. If you eat the cake, then you can't have it. You're going to be eating the cake, because eventually the cake will be gone. You know, you're eating little pieces of it. That's why you can't have your cake and eat it too, because you can either have it or eat it. Because if you eat it, you are having it, but you're not going to keep it. It's going to go away. Eventually you're going to crap it out. Or defecate it, I should say. That's what that means.
To reveal to Edgar that she knows about this affair. And while we don't see Edgar's reaction, we do see that he very quickly moves to tell Kathy that Heathcliff is no longer welcome in the home. He is sent away by Edgar, and she's devastated by this whole thing because, you know, that Heathcliff is no longer... And we do see that he very quickly...
She should label this. She should label this as spoilery review. Yeah, that's not fun. I didn't have anything to make an expectation. Why would I really? I'm not gonna fucking overanalyze this film. You know, I didn't like the ending. It's still a fucked up ending. She died from sepsis. Fucking simp. What was that? People hate this movie because they're trying to compare it. Stop comparing it to the book. I know it's based on the book. But don't compare it to the book. Watch it as a movie. That's the problem with people. They try to compare this to the and I get it because it's based on the book, so you can't help but compare it to the book. That's with everything, but still. Appreciate some part of it, at least, for it being a movie. Ooh, I want to see what IGN says. But they're not going to do that. They're just going to talk a good 30 minutes about it. And fucking... This person keeps a 5-minute review. That's pretty good, I guess. That's AI. Simps. I gotta.
Quickly moved to tell Kathy that Heathcliff is no longer welcome in the home. He is sent away by Edgar, and she's devastated by this whole thing because, you know, she likes Heathcliff. And I mean, it's Jacob Elordi. If he walked out on me, I think I'd cry too. So Jacob Elordi then decides to take Isabella, you know, the ward with the ribbons and the Romeo and Juliet. These two get so weird. I'm not even kidding you. At one point, she's chained to the wall and barking like a dog, and Nellie goes over there and she's like, why don't you come home? And she's like, I am home. I'm like, oh, shit. You've got issues. I like your issues. Heathcliff spends all this time with Isabella writing letters to Kathy that Nellie basically just burns every single time. So Kathy doesn't get any of these letters, and while she should be developing this child that she is supposedly with, nothing changes, and eventually she tells Nellie the child is gone. That's what ends up being the resolution or lack of resolution in this film. They discover that Kathy has sepsis because the child within her did in fact die, but since she didn't pass it, now it's basically rotting in her and she has developed septicemia. It's too late for her to be helped, and before long, Kathy eventually succumbs to her madness and to this sickness. Heathcliff makes it way too late to see her, and there's this beautiful moment, and this is honestly what devastated me, because for all the freakiness and the fact that these two are objectively unlikable people. Kathy is naive at the beginning and very pushy in this childish way, which again, it looks weird seeing that played by a 35-year-old woman when she's playing 16, but I digress. As she grows up, we get somebody who is flawed in a really interesting way, because she's objectively an asshole. She's often really cruel when she wants to be. She's willing to say things clearly to hurt people, but she also really seeks compassion and connection. She actually goes far as to ask Nellie for it. She's really complicated in that way. And Heathcliff, even though he's somebody who yearns and he pines, and we want to really encourage that and love a man who does that, he's inherently problematic in how he sees Edgar, who realistically, as I mentioned earlier, he does nothing wrong in this whole movie. He just loves the wrong person. And so what I really liked about Wuthering Heights is that it's not afraid to basically make your two protagonists unlikable. People are inherently flawed, we aren't perfect, and sometimes we genuinely suck. And I think despite the fact that both of these people are kind of loathsome at different points, you really want them to find happiness, because it's almost like the only time where they are good people is kind of when they're together, and even then that's dubious. But it really is kind of an interesting dynamic here, because I really can't say I liked Kathy as a person, and I can't say I liked Heathcliff as a person either. But by the end of the movie, when all is said and done, and Heathcliff is crying over the corpse that is Kathy, a perfectly pale and miserable looking Margot Robbie, whom even with no color left in her skin is still more pretty than I will ever be. Holy shit, that woman is a goddess. Anyway, the whole point is that he's crying over her, and we get this flashback to a night when they were children. It really kind of broke my heart, because it's one of those things where it reveals that innocence at the core of their love for each other. For as flawed and imperfect as they were as people, for as flawed and imperfect as their relationship with each other was, there was just this goodness, this base childlike affection and care that had developed from so many years before and just never really got to flourish. And I really, at that point, was just crying. Like, at first, I felt my eyes watering and I was getting choked up, and I was like, no, don't do that. And then there was one tear trickling down. My friend was sitting on this side, so I was like, all right, cool. One manly tear. She's not even gonna see it. I'll just wipe that right off. We're good to go. And then the other one started, and I was like, get the f out of here. What are you doing? And then next thing I knew, I was just like, you know, I wasn't weeping. I wasn't making any noise about it, you know, but I was like actually crying. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And I realized that to me is the mark of art, because I really felt moved by this movie. At the beginning of it, I'm not even kidding you. That's what I think is the great part about this iteration of the movie. That to me is the mark of art. It was crazy. It was so crazy. I wasn't making any noise about it, you know, but I was, then next thing I knew, my friend was sitting on this side. So I was like, all right, cool. One man and just never really got to flourish. And I really, at that point, was just crying. Like, at first, children, it really kind of broke my heart, because it's one of those things where it reveals that innocence at the core of their love for each other. For as flawed and imperfect as they were as people, for as flawed and imperfect as their relationship with each other was, there was just this goodness, this base childlike affection and care that had developed from so many years before and just never really got to flourish. And I really, at that point, was just crying. Like, at first, I felt my eyes watering and I was getting choked up, and I was like, no, don't do that. And then there was one tear trickling down. My friend was sitting on this side, so I was like, all right, cool. One manly tear. She's not even gonna see it. I'll just wipe that right off. We're good to go. And then the other one started, and I was like, get the f out of here. What are you doing? And then next thing I knew, I was just like, you know, I wasn't weeping. I wasn't making any noise about it, you know, but I was like actually crying. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And I realized that to me is the mark of art, because I really felt moved by this movie. At the beginning of it, I'm not even kidding you, that's what I think is the great part about this iteration of Wuthering Heights, is when I sat down, the look of my face was very much like, yeah, I don't know about that, you know, I don't even know what they're gonna do here. And for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, I was very much like, no, this is not gonna be for me. And by the end of the movie, I was moved to the point of tears. And it was a story that I had no connection to, characters that I had no connection to, something that I really had no awareness of. And they did that good a job with this narrative, with really making it moving. I thought it was brilliant. And so I know people that have read Wuthering Heights are probably going to expect more, because there's a lot more to the story after the death of Kathy. And in fact, the book itself, from what I understand, is also written from the perspective of like a flashback being told by Nellie. And so none of that happens in this movie. The film ends with Kathy's death and this flashback sequence to when they were kids, kind of showing us a parallel between Heathcliff holding her in death and the way they had held each other in life. That's it. The movie ends there. So again, I can understand if you're waiting for all of that other symbolism, all that other drama that happens in Wuthering Heights. There's other characters, there's children that we never see. I mean, it really is a huge step away from the original Wuthering Heights novel, but I think that what they do with this film as a in Wuthering Heights, there's other symbolism, all that other drama that happens in Wuthering Heights. There's other and Heathcliff holding her in death and the way they had held each other in life. That's it. The movie ends there. So again, I can understand if you're waiting for all of that other symbolism, all that other drama that happens in Wuthering Heights. There's other characters, there's children that we never see. I mean, it really is a huge step away from the original Wuthering Heights novel, but I think that what they do with this film as a standalone film, if you're looking for that 100% true adaptation, you're going to be wanting to rip your hair out, because that's not what this film is. But if you're looking to sit down and watch a good movie, a good romance, a good drama, if you're looking for two beautiful people to interact with each other beautifully, this is a great movie. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't give it a higher score because I do tend to respect adaptations a little more when they stick closer to the source material, and I now know that it's not super close to the source material. And on top of that, honestly, the thing that was just throwing me off the whole time was that Margot Robbie struck me as a 35-year-old the entire time. It's not that her performance was lacking, it was just the casting choice in and of itself kind of threw me off. But performance-wise, music-wise, the score, the cinematography, the look of it, it's so rare that I move to tears by any movie at all, much less a movie that I don't have a connection to source material or an IP, right? I mean, if they killed off Bucky in the next Avengers movie, regardless of how little I care about Doomsday, I would probably be sobbing because I've been in love with him since like 2010. But this, two characters that I got invested in 2 hours and it brought me to tears, I think is a real showing of how much love and care got put into this movie and how good a job they did with it. I know people are probably not going to agree with me on my rating of Wuthering Heights, but an 8 out of 10 I feel like is fair. That is 100% how I feel about it. I really, really loved this movie. I haven't seen a good drama like this in a long time. So, you know, hopefully my tears were worth it, and it's been worth it me sitting in this corset.
You haven't seen Hamlet? Hamnet, my bad. Hamlet, watch that one. That's a good drama.
Doing this review because I wore a corset to watch the movie at the premiere, and that really sucked. This is not much better, so hopefully it was worth it. And that's all here in this corset doing this review because I wore a corset to watch the movie at the premiere, and that really sucked. This is not much better, so hopefully it was worth it. And that's all from me. I've been Snarky J.
She didn't like it?
You know, hopefully my tears were worth it, and it's been worth it me sitting in this corset doing this review because I wore a corset to watch the movie. And that's all from me. I've been Snarky J. Thank you so much for watching. Please
thank you.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more Snarky J, be sure to...
No, we're not going to do that. I don't want to see all your bullshit now, okay? No, nothing good. Thank you. That's what Johnson has to say.
Wait, what? What is this? What link did I just get sent? Emerald Fennell. a director that everyone is completely normal about for sure. Promising Young Woman, her first movie, had somewhat of a controversial moment in regards to its ending. She went on to make Saltburn, which was also pretty divisive, which featured Barry Keoghan licking cum off a bathtub. What the fuck? And then she said, I will now adapt the Emily Bronte novel Wuthering Heights, which and then she's pretty divisive, which featured Barry Keoghan licking cum off a bathtub. What the fuck? And then she said, I will now adapt the Emily Bronte novel Wuthering Heights, which has been mired in also controversy pretty much since its inception. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this is pretty much mired in also controversy pretty much
has been a witness how Wuthering Heights became this year's most developed
since its inception. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this is pretty much familiar territory for Emerald Fennell. And ever since this movie was announced, I have heard takes about this movie.
So hard.
Literally non-stop, with some being very excited for Fennell's take on this and her expert craft, to other opinions of people saying this is a terrible choice and this is going to be a hot topic movie. And that is not even to mention the main controversy of Jacob Elordi's casting. Well, enough foreplay, let's just get in the main controversy of Jacob Elordi's
Heathcliff.
casting. Well, enough foreplay, let's just get into it. I saw Wuthering Heights last night, and this movie is very strange. Let's make a big disclaimer here, okay? I did not read the book. I have literally zero attachment to the novel at all. So if that
How many people are going to say that? How many reviewers are going to say they did not watch, they did not read the book? Did you watch the PBS version? This version right here? Did you watch this yet? Part 1 and 2 of it. This is starring, let's look at the cast. Tom Hardy. You got Tom Hardy is Heathcliff. Shit, stop. You got Charlotte Raleigh as Kathy, or Catherine. Edgar, Andrew Lincoln, aka Rick Grimes. Kathy. Yes, again. Linton. Yep. You watch that one, did you? You should check it out.
Qualifies me from talking about this movie or just being irrelevant in your mind, which frankly my opinion should be anyways, that's totally okay. I'm just letting you know where I'm coming from. I've been sitting back wondering, twirling my fingers as I've been reading all the takes about this movie, and I'm like, you know what, where am I gonna be? I'm kind of excited for it. I do not hate Emerald Fennell as a filmmaker. I liked Promising Young Woman when I first saw it, even though I have literally zero desire to go back and see it again. Saltburn I thought was at least interesting, if not pretty flawed, but still, I did like it. And on the surface, Wuthering Heights should be something I should be all in for. And while, yes, I'm not the target demographic for this, it has Margot Robbie, and honestly, I can stop there. I'm in. Now, if you can't already tell, I am just going on a rant here, going completely off the dome, so I don't know where this will lead me, where this will lead you. Hopefully it's entertaining. Anyways, Wuthering Heights, I don't understand this movie at all. I don't know what this movie is trying to do at all. And again, before people start yelling at me, I just said I did not read the book, so I can't speak to the themes of the book and what that book is trying to do. All I can speak to is what I saw with this movie. And what I did see is a very beautiful looking, confusing character study of these two freaks that I'm just like, What am I supposed to take away from this? Truly, because I'm for any romance movie, okay? I'm for it. Morally complex or downright flawed characters, I'm down for it also. There's a line in this movie, and I assume in the book, that says, "Let us both be damned." That in itself, I'm for. But as I'm watching this movie of these complete sociopaths, I'm like, oh, okay, like, I don't really care what happens to you. You should die. And I realize that sounds harsh, but from what I have gathered of people who have read the book, clearly it resonates to them, and they do not see that same effect happening in this movie. Because while this movie looks amazing, it is beautiful. Linus Sanger, the cinematographer. Can I talk to you about Babylon for a second? It looks gorgeous. The costumes are very well done. The production design is all there. I appreciate that she knows how to light a movie. The damned element in this is that I do not care about their relationship at all. This reminded me of seeing some of my friends' relationships in high school, where I'm like, this is so wrong on every level. Like, it just does not work. And they keep going back to each other, and they're making bad choices. And again, that can be an interesting movie. I am for that. I'm not saying I want these people to be great people who have no flaws at all. What I'm saying is, this movie does nothing to make you invest in that. And it made me think, like, okay, the gorgeous nature of this movie and how it looks does not hide the fact that it is a very shallow development of these two characters. And I am the most curious to talk to someone who has read the book. I tried to get someone to come on here in time who's like an expert on this book. I couldn't get it. And I think part of the problem also with this is, okay, if I don't care about the relationship, I think these are like bad characters, or, you know, whatever. I can at least have a fun time, right? The trailers, the way people have talked about this movie, I was promised a freaky ass movie. I was expecting a whole bunch of fingers in the mouth, all right? I was expecting some freaky shit, okay? Saltburn is freaky. So I said to myself, okay, amongst everything, as I was watching this movie, at least I can have some fun with it. And I can't either. This movie is surprisingly tame, and it goes to an uneven tone, because the first half of this movie leads you one way, and then I feel like it backtracks. I need this movie to commit. You go all in on the freaky, or you don't at all and you play it straight, because whatever they decided to do does not work. The freakiest thing about this movie is broken egg yolks and like running your fingers through that and it's all slimy. I wanted to be fully invested in their forbidden love, and when I couldn't get that, I said, okay, I want at least some freaky stuff to happening so I can walk away saying, hey, at least I had fun. And then when I can't get that, there's not a lot here for me to really love, and it became pretty tame, mundane, and frankly boring. Because the frustrating thing about this is the quotes in this movie, the dialogue, which I assume most of it is taken from the book, promises, again, a more deep, fleshed out story. And when you don't get that, and then, with all due respect, a Charlie XCX song comes on, I'm kind of like, this is trying to like mask what's really happening here, which is not a lot. This is one of those easy cases where I actually say I think I really like and respond to Emerald Fennell, the director, but I don't respond to Emerald Fennell, the writer. And it's disappointing because I never saw Emerald Fennell as someone who could be afraid to take risks, but I really felt that in here, which I don't know why. I felt like she had a free reign to do that. Let's talk about the performances real quick. Margot Robbie, who I love. Again, did not read the novel. No clue if this is good or not. I didn't really buy Margot Robbie as Kathy. I felt the dynamic was a little strange. That does not mean she gives a bad performance. That is not what I'm saying. I just felt like her casting in this, I just never fully bought in. It was a little odd. It always stood out to me. I never could shake that is Margot Robbie playing Kathy. But that's not the most interesting thing here, with all due respect. Jacob Elordi, again, only judging off the tweets I have seen of people who have read the book, Heathcliff is supposed to be a person of color, and obviously Jacob Elordi is not. I think Jacob Elordi is pretty good in this. I think it's fair to say he did put up a triple-double on the woman in the screening, okay? I heard some audible gasps, and he is very charismatic, incredibly commanding of the screen, even when I'm like, this dude is the Joker. They did do something, I will say, with that kind of controversy of Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff, which is the only people of color in this movie is Hong Chow and Shazad Latif, I believe. They play Nellie and Edgar. And again, I won't spoil what their characters do in case you're not familiar. All I'll say is for Kathy and Heathcliff's damned love, they view those people as obstacles, as getting in the way of their love. And I think them viewing the only people of color as barriers, as prevention, as obstacles for them getting what they want is interesting to me. Again, can't speak on the novel, but I'm sure Emerald Fennell has to be aware of some of that controversy there, and I'm sure she knew what she was doing when she cast Jacob Elordi as Heathcliff in the very beginning. So I'd like to think that was a purposeful choice. I don't want to make it seem like I hate this movie, because truthfully I don't. There are moments that really heighten the tension and the drama, and there are moments where I am bought in to what they are doing, but it's only for scenes. When you expand it to the 2-hour, 18-minute runtime, whatever it is, it does not sustain that at all. But I will say, if you are on this movie's wavelength from the beginning and you buy into what they're doing with these characters, this will strike a chord with you for sure. I wish I could be a part of that, but alas, I cannot. How old is Jacob Elordi? How old is Jacob Elordi? Wow, we're the same age. That really hurts my feelings. Well, you
He is 1997. June the 3rd. June the 3rd. June the 26th. How old is it? 1997. I forget. I don't know. Let me see. Oh, it's 29. Well, he will be in August. 28 now. In June, sorry.
You all let me know what you think when you see it, but this was quite a strange movie that I still don't really have a grasp on. Maybe I'll see it again, probably not. Wuthering Heights.
Damn, she's 30. I'm 34, she's 35. She's gonna be 36 soon.
2.5 stars? I have no idea if I'll be in the minority or not here. I haven't really looked at what other people have said in terms of reviews, but yeah, you let me know what you think in the comment. Please subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Boing. Oh well. Good actress. Let me just look at the video. There's not. In the well. How mature he looks. How mature he looks. Look, it's time to move. Good. Great.
Wuthering Heights in inverted commas.
Yes, which I still don't fully understand. But so look, a lot to talk about in a great interview. Fennell said in that interview that she wanted this to be not just a tribute to the book, but to movies. Of course, Wuthering Heights has been filmed umpteen times. There's a version from 1920, an A.V. Bramble version, apparently largely filmed in Haworth, which is now believed lost. There is famously the Laurence Olivier Mel Oberon version, for which the tagline read, "I am torn with desire, tortured by hate." And then leaping forward, there was a Nigel Neal script for the BBC that was done in the 50s and 60s. There's a Timothy Dalton version from the 70s, which I haven't seen, but is apparently not bad. In the 90s, there's the Peter Kosminski version with Ralph Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. I think that was the first time I actually saw Ralph Fiennes in anything. And of course, there is, early on, there's the dreamy encounter with Catherine's ghost scratching at the window. And a large part of the book takes place after Catherine's, I'm sorry with plot spoilers and all this, but after Catherine's...
I think we can cover
It's fine.
that.
Large part of the book takes place after Catherine's death. And it's, next generational, and there is Heathcliff consumed with rage and grief, and there's the whole thing about Cathy and blah, blah. Anyway, most of that... So in the book, they're really only together in death when they're buried side by side. In this version, the ghostly encounter that's recounted in Kate Bush's, let me in at the window thing, isn't here because this film concentrates on their life together. As I have to say, almost all film adaptations previously have done. So this is the story of their life together and their earthly and, as you pointed out, earthy relationship. Mm-hmm. There's also things in this, she actually names him Heathcliff and then says, therefore, that she owns him. So Emerald Fennell has said that her response to this is largely driven by the response of a 14-year-old girl encountering the book and feeling all these things. And it's the feeling and the tactility that she's trying to get to. So we see young Catherine and Heathcliff, Charlotte Millington and Owen Cooper, as you just pointed out. rolling and falling in green, to quote Kate Bush. They stay out in the rain too long. He takes a beating for her in order to save her because he's devoted to her. And then we go in on the newly beaten wounds, and then we come out when they're scars. Now they're grown up. Now they're Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, clearly destined to be together. But this, I know everyone knows this, he overhears her saying that she can't possibly marry him. So he goes off. She ends up marrying Edgar because they need money, because the family is sort of destitute, but she continues to pine for Heathcliff. Then Heathcliff comes back, now basically in charge of Wuthering Heights and exacting his revenge. And in the book, it is absolutely driven by revenge, and then brutally wooing Isabella. And it is particularly sort of brutal in the film. So, as far as the film's concerned, the first thing to say is the whole thing, it is preposterous. I mean, it is a preposterous adaptation. But I don't say that meaning, therefore, it's bad. Emerald Fennell said in that interview, you like to have the feeling of your toes on the edge of the cliff. Was that the phrase she used? Which I thought was really lovely. You need to feel the edge of the cliff there. And you need to be not worried about being embarrassing or being ridiculous or being silly. And one could say that the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet, which struck such a sweet spot with that target audience, was also preposterous. It just happened to be something that was received very, very well. Emerald Fennell talks in that interview about the physical, visceral reaction, and how what she wants to do is to create something that will create a physical, visceral reaction. She also wants to make it absolutely accessible to that, to the 14-year-old in her. So Anthony Willis scored Charlie XCX songs. The set and costume design, which you talked about in the interview, is a cross between Hammer Gothic, like blood reds, ominous dark blacks, lightning skies, landscapes drenched in, well, I suppose it's mist, but it kind of looks like it's come out of a mole fogger. There's also, weirdly enough, quite a lot of Derek Jarman sets for the devils in the set of Wuthering Heights. The tiles, the tiled arch is really, really Derek Jarman. She calls the whole thing an emotional landscape, the absolute physical embodiment of a pathetic fallacy. And it does have all of that about it. It all looks like a set, even the bits that aren't a set, because the whole thing is kind of like an imaginary emotional landscape which is designed to within an inch of its life. The script has got that same kind of tongue-in-cheek sensibility that as certainly had in her previous films. I mean, the bawdiness of Saltburn, the sticky egg yolks dripping from sheets, the fleshy dough being exotically kneaded. You're pulling a face, Simon Mayer.
There's a dead fish. Can I stick my fingers into its mouth?
I wonder what that means. There's a lot of licking. There's a fair amount of drooling. There is an abundance of bodice ripping, rumpling and scrumpling, some of it involving mouthfuls of grass. And as she pointed out, there's a touch of horse's bit S&M. I was thinking at one point they should have called it 50 Shades of Green. But she says that at heart, the story is about constraining nature, hence the bridles, hence the corsets, hence the dog collars. Which I'm thinking, yeah, but also, you conceded that, maybe that's a bit titillating. Maybe? Yeah. The main issue is the casting. Now, she talked in that interview about Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, Burton and Taylor, and actually both of those are certainly evoked by the poster for Wuthering Heights, which looks like the poster for Gone with the Wind. And she talks about stars who have combustible, huge charisma. So it is certainly true that her stars have that. But it's also an indication that what she's doing is old-fashioned casting. And when I say old-fashioned casting, I mean the kind of casting that you could have got away with in the past, but is now somewhat frowned upon. So, if this was an old Hollywood version of it, then absolutely fine. Margot Robbie is a superstar. She's also playing a character who, in the novel, dies pretty much half her age, but that's fine because she's a superstar. As for Elordi, he's in his, late 20s or something, but he is nothing like Bronte's description of Heathcliff, who, of course, in the novel is described as being like dark-skinned gypsy in aspect and a little lascar, which is a sailor from India or Southeast Asia. And none of those descriptions fit Jacob Elordi. And so there's been the issue of whitewashing Heathcliff, although that is really nothing new, because you have to remember that Andrea Arnold's version of Wuthering Heights, which I think is 2010, was hailed at the time as being the first screen adaptation to cast a black actor as Heathcliff. And that's like nearly a century after the very first version. And so the idea that the whitewashing of Heathcliff is an issue, I mean, that has been all the way through the history of doing screen adaptations of Wuthering Heights. And Andrea Arnold was the person who then got flack for going the other way. The real surprise in the casting, as you said in the interview, is Martin Clunes, and I think he steals the show.
Yes, I agree.
Because he's playing a combination of two characters. You know, he is playing the father, and then he's playing the son. The brutality of him sort of drives so much of the plot, but he's playing it as one character who's been compressed. And actually, it's quite an interesting act of compression. But the thing that he gets right is, and I like Martin Clunes, but I never had on my scorecard that he was going to be this good in a dramatic role, because he's got the combination of buffoonery and threat. You know, the pathos and the rage. And I don't think I've ever been alarmed by him before on screen, because he's such a likable presence. You know, that's his wheelhouse. He's likable. Mm-hmm. I think he's really, really good. Plaudits too to Hong Chau's Nellie, who, you know, sort of effectively is the narrator of the story. So I think overall, it's ridiculous, although so have so many adaptations of it been. It's preposterous, and at times it sort of feels hollow because it's surfacey, and it's a lot of design, and it's a lot of upfront stuff, and everything's in your face. And of course it's not the novel, but I mean, really, the Andrea Arnold is the one that gets closest to the novel, and that still actually does a huge amount of editing and changing and abandoning. And I kept asking myself all the way through it, if I was a 14-year-old girl, which, of course, as Sherry Lansing pointed out to me so spectacularly when I said I don't understand Titanic, and she said that's because you're not a 14-year-old girl, I kept thinking, you know, what would you get from this? And I can imagine it being, a really fun cinema outing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is ridiculous, and it is silly. And there are bits of it that are like, oh, really? But I also don't get people getting off their bike and going, well, it's outrageous. That's not what the novel is. You go, yeah, no, it's not the novel. And maybe that's what putting the Wuthering Heights title.
It absolutely is. That's why it's in inverted commas. It's a version of that.
Fine. Okay. Well, in that case, that makes so as in inverted commas, Wuthering Heights, as recounted by a filmmaker remembering what they thought about when they were a 14-year-old girl. Fine.
Yeah, I think that the first thing to say is it's a big hit. I think.
But you're predicting that it will be.
Yes, I think it will be, and I'm speaking as a 14-year-old girl now. I think I'll enjoy going to see it. So I do think Emerald Fennell knows that. I was clearly just listening back to the interview when we started talking about casting. I should have gone further on precisely the fact that. Well, it's hard to say, isn't Margot Robbie too old and isn't Jacob Elordi too white? But I do think that, I know Emerald Fennell is amazing, but if you're a white director, you have to have a very, very good excuse to ignore the direction of a novel, which clearly says they're not white. So,
although it has to be said that for the best part of a century, filmmakers did ignore that, and as I said, that's why the Andrea Arnold version was considered to be so groundbreaking.
So, but it's 2026, and
I know,
I'm not sure you can do that anymore.
No, I do agree with that, and I do think the casting is a problem.
So I would just I agree with what you said. I think Hong Chau's Nellie is fantastic.
Yeah.
Alison Oliver as Isabella and Martin Clunes, I thought they were captivating, and I thought they were the heart of it, even though Jacob and Margot get to kind of thrash each other and snog and stuff.
Snog is a polite word.
Yes, that's true. But it's it's funny how it manages to be completely out there in terms of, here we go, eggs, fish, bread, all that again. And everyone keeps their clothes on for the whole film.
Yeah.
Because that's the way of things these days.
But do you agree with me that people getting off their bike about it and giving it 1 star are being silly?
Oh well, one star is is clearly ridiculous.
Yeah.
I understand why, because I did think, at the end of the film, you think, okay, that was, and then the Charlie XCX music works. Isn't she? Anyway, yes, it's fine. We've touched all the bases. I just think we go from Margot and Heathcliff and Jacob being like 10 years old to skipping a quarter of a century to when Margot is 35.
Although actually the characters are skipping 8 years.
Yeah. But
I know.
Like that,
but how Merle Oberon was like, approaching 30 when she played. I mean, because again, that's what I meant when I said it's very old-fashioned casting. It's the kind of casting that you would have got away with in Hollywood when no one cared how old you were, as long as you were famous.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think Emerald will have a big hit.
Back to Hollywoodland Photos. My name is Cassidy.
I don't know if I can handle this. I better stop it here. I think that the film was good, honestly. I think that the film was sad, had a sad ending. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. That's for sure. I don't think it was too bad. I liked it. I liked the film. People trying to make it, Anyway, I gotta be getting bed, so.